Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's edition of MetalCon Live. Presenting the session, Buying MCM, What the Industry Has in Store for You, are members of MCA's MCM, or Metal Composite Material Alliance. Tom Seitz is joining us. He is the Executive Director of the MCM Alliance. John Trifonoff is also joining, and he is the president of East Coast Metal Systems, Inc. And finally, I have Dutch Judeman, who is not featured on this slide, and I sincerely apologize for that. But Dutch is the Southeast Regional Sales Manager for Arconic Products. Now, July is a little funny. July is a month of MCA presentations with MetalCon Live. On July 26th, we will be joined by the IMP Alliance with the MCA, who will present their session on bidding and estimating for insulated metal panels. The Metal Construction Association, or the MCA, is a fantastic organization with numerous benefits for their members, including special discounts for exhibiting at MetalCon. And if you'd like to learn more about them, what they do, or how to become a member, you can find out additional information on this screen and on this slide right now. In case you haven't heard, I don't know how you haven't, but MetalCon is just a few months away. Make sure that you register now before prices increase on July 28th. Tom, John, and Dutch will all be joining us in person at this year's MetalCon to present this session in person on buying MCM. Lastly, this course is approved for AIA credit. There is a brief form at the end of this webinar to receive your certificate and to ensure if you are an AIA member that you get all the credits you need. If you run into any questions or issues, please submit them in the chat box. And if you run into any technical troubles, I'll be the one to help you out. I'm MetalCon in the chat box below. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Tom. Tom, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, Ellen, thanks very much. And thanks all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And it's our hope that you take away something of value for your current or next MCM project. Because buying MCM, obviously the architects had a vision to use MCM for a multitude of design reasons. Colors, flexibility, lightweight characteristics are just a few features. And we don't want to forget, it's a really cool product that I've been working with for well over 25 years. So it's something that has a lot of meaning to all of us. But today we're going to dive into a few other items. John with East Coast Metal Systems is going to review some spec items. I'm going to talk a little bit about the labeling and engineering evaluations. Dutch with Arconic will then discuss some high-tech finishes with his Paint 101. Then John comes back with his information on the MCM Fabricator Certification System and the MCM systems. And then we'll wrap things up for you and then take some questions. So on that basis,
so Tom, to jump in, you're just going to have to share your screen again.
Yep. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You're good.
Here we go. Little technical glitch there. Somehow they got cut off there. All right. Here we go.
There you go, Tom.
Let's see where we go. There we go. I just went through the agenda, and now we'll go through the master spec with John. Take it away, John.
Hey, Tom, next slide, buddy. Let's see. We're going to talk about the MCM master specification, basically section 7. So with the MCA master specification, you will have all your test references, and standards listed have been identified by the IBC, or the International Building Code. The American Society of Civil Engineering, ASCE, the American Society of Testing and Material, the ASTM, the Architectural Manufacturers Association, AAMA, and then the test reference will be ASTM D1781, the E-84, E-283, the E-330, the E-331, the E-1233. It also lists the AMA 2605, 501, 508, 509, and NFP 285 requirements for all MCM systems. Under performance, we'll reference the ASCE Section 7, which states, will provide installed MCM systems designed to withstand specified loading while maintaining allowable deflection, thermal movement performance defined by the manufacturer and fabricator. The QC assurance will be the submittals with manufacturer's certified test reports, product certification signed by the MCM manufacturer, the MCM Fabricator Certified System test reports. It also states that the manufacturers have a 10-year requirement for manufacturing in the United States. The fabricators have a 5-year requirement for producing product in the States, and the installer has a 5-year requirement. As far as products and fab, it lists 5 different major manufacturers, lists 11 premium MCM fabricators. On the finishes side, shall be meet performance criteria for the AAMA or AMA 2605. Under fabrication, specifies that the panels will be shop fabricated, also gives fabrication tolerances and allowances. Lists the types of systems and testing standards along with stiffening requirements per engineering. On field installation, that the installers will be approved by the fabricator, list test reports if mock-ups are required, and the general conditions for the subframing and the tolerances of that subframing. And with that, let's take it back to Tom.
Thanks, John. And we'll get into, let's see, come on, there we go. Okay. Get into product labeling and engineering evaluations. Anybody searching the internet nowadays will find lots of products laying claim to being an MCM, but just because it says it's an MCM doesn't really mean so. And this is why products or systems need to be supported by some testing. The question becomes, is there a labeling program as required by the IBC code, which ensures the product being supplied to your site uses the same process, components, and quality requirements of the product tested? So in essence, the labeling process is closing that loop and making sure that what you specify and what you have bought is what's going on that building. So I think the labeling is an assurance of quality, compliance with the stated performance requirements, and conformance with the IBC code. So all of these issues are really important to discuss here. When you talk about the MCM labeling path, though, it's a bit of a convoluted process. And it starts with the IBC section 1406, which on this slide states the MCM panels must be tested, inspected, and labeled. But it goes further than that. In the IBC code 1703.5 and 0.5.1 and 5.4, you're basically looking for an approved agency doing the testing with the MCM to the relevant IBC code test standards, so they can maintain the testing performance and provide the sufficient detail to verify compliance with the test standards. And then the other part of this whole thing is it's a periodically performing an in-plant manufacturing inspection to make sure that the materials continue in the process to as what they were tested to. So it again completes that loop that what you're getting, what you specified, you're getting in the whole process there. So when you talk about that aspect, then the code requires identification to show the manufacturing and performance compliance when the panel is installed for the future and for future material traceability. Another important factor, if something has to come off that building and double check, you have to know that that material has some traceability. So the continuous inspection process is another key element to showing the product is acceptable and meets the IBC requirements. Another very important item to mention and to remember is labeling is not an option, nor is it tied to a successful NFP 285 test. So now onto the engineering evaluations and judgments or analysis. There's called a couple different things. Again, it's permitted by the IBC section 104.11. And it's a viable path based on case by case. In other words, all these NFP 285 tests that have been done and the data that has been performed on them. So there's it ties it all together in that. And then the other item here that is probably the most important part is it's required acceptance by a local code official. The AHJ, the authority having judgment, is the one who makes the final decision on whether or not this engineering evaluation, judgment, or analysis really fits what he's looking for. And not every design change can be supported. So you could be going through this whole thing. If you're not real sure, it might not even make it. So the components of the evaluation are, it must be completed by a qualified, experienced technical organization, consultant, engineer. Most cases, it's a fire protection engineering firm. They're the ones that have the most experience. It must clearly describe the change being requested and how it varies from the tested assembly, the successful tested NFP 285 tested assembly. And does the evaluation provide the technical justification for the change? So how the substitution change is determined is to be okay is obviously additional testing, technical rationale, and testing experience. All of those are part of that same process. The key question for an engineering analysis and evaluation or judgment is, does this substitution provide a wall assembly exhibiting the same or similar fire performance as the successful 285? That is the key point to this whole process. Now, in this process, there's an awful lot of components. And our suggestion is, and the suggestion that comes from the fire protection engineers is, start this process as early as possible. If you know your system might be lacking in a certain function, don't waste time, get on there early, because delays can be costly in time, weeks, months in delays. And that's not something that you really want to get involved with when you're working on a project for an owner. So on that basis, I hope that answers a few questions there, and we'll get to it further down the road. But I'm going to go on to next, as the high-tech finishes with Dutch. All yours, Dutch.
Thanks, Tom. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. As the supplier of the aluminum composite material, the manufacturers are responsible for providing the high-tech or the high-performing paint finishes that are supplied on the ACM material. So basically, when you're looking at those finishes, there's a wide variety of finishes available. They can range from two-coat solids, effect pigment paints. Those would include your micas and metallics. We see a lot more color shifting finishes in the market today. And of course, the natural stone and wood finishes have become quite popular. Now, basically, the paint finish is what differentiates one sheet from the next. So it's all, based on the architects, your decisions on what colors you want to be utilized on your building. We also do provide, as an ACM manufacturer, the bottom section of that slide there, you see this rainbow of colors, and we do a lot of that for branding applications like automotive dealerships and such. And just understand that that rainbow of colors isn't quite as broad as it used to be with some of the changes in sustainability and controls over those products these days. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we get further in. So Tom, if you could switch to the next slide. So what is paint comprised of? So there's three major components. There's some other, small items, additives that are in that, but there's three primary components of paint systems out there in the market today. The pigments, which drives your color, your effects, also contributes to cool pigment technology for horizontal and some vertical situations. The resin system is truly the backbone of the product of the paint system. There's a multitude of different resin types that are utilized in the industry, but those that are most popular in architectural applications is your PVDF, That includes your Kynar 5000, Kynar 500 and Hylar 5000 systems, high durable polyesters, as well as FEVE resin, and then also on the lower end, you'll see your polyester resin types. These resins are what really drive the performance of the paint system and is critical on architectural applications for exterior use. The last item is the catalyst, which for coil-coated materials like we supply that are factory applied in a huge coil coating line, that catalyst is the component that actually cures the paint with heat to provide a hard, long-lasting, durable paint finish for the applications we see. Tom, if you'll go to the next slide. So how do we rate the different types of paint finishes that are utilized in the architectural market? The American Architectural Manufacturers Association, or AMA, over the years, and this has been in place for 30 plus years, AMA has developed what they describe as a voluntary specification for different types of paint performance. These specifications are a collection of different ASTM test protocols that measure performance of the paint systems, whether it's pencil hardness, film thickness, durability to corrosion and such. And there's different levels of that within the system. This includes, like I said, film integrity, exterior weathability, and then sustained appearance over the life of the paint system. So let's talk a little bit more about these AMA specifications. Tom, if you'll slide to the next one. So there's three primary AMA specifications in the industry: AMA 2605, AMA 2604, and AMA 2603. In this slide, it shows kind of a breakdown of what type of resin systems are capable of meeting those minimum expectations based on the test protocols listed in these AMA specifications. As you can see, AMA 2605, you have your 70% PVDF resin paint systems out there. There are a number of high durable polyesters that can meet that criteria, and a large quantity of the FEVE resin systems are capable of meeting the AMA 2605. As you take a step down to 2604, you'll see that there's the 50% PVDF paint systems, the majority of your HD polyesters, and then some amount of your FEVEs meet that AMA 2604. Now, I do want to make a comment here that with regard to the differentiating between AMA 2605 and 2604 for those HD polyesters and FEVE coatings, it's really based on the pigmentation that is used in those formulations. Your bright, vibrant colors that you see in branding applications, the blues, the reds, yellows, greens, oranges, the pigmentation utilized to get those colors is not as durable to UV light as your muted earth tones that you see more on the architectural side. So there are some limitations with bright, vibrant colors meeting that AMA 2605 specification. Then on the low end, the 2603, you've got your standard polyesters, acrylics, and enamels. These are good products out there in the market, but primarily utilized for interior applications where UV light and UV exposure is not a significant impactor on the performance of the paint system. If you'll move to the next one. So just to give an example of how these test protocols differ, the testing protocols that are within the specifications are really very similar. They reference the same testing methods. The difference is to what level of performance standard is required to meet the AMA criteria for 2605. If you look at this table here, you can see there's references to coating thickness, abrasion resistance, color retention, and such, and it's step changes. So as you go from 2603, there may be no requirement per a protocol, and then you move to 2604, and now you've got a minimum expectation. And then AMA 2605 just elevates it to the highest degree. A good example here is for color retention. In order to meet these specifications, that each AMA spec requires that minimum. For 2603, you've got 1 year of South Florida exposure. 2604 is 5 years of South Florida exposure. And to meet the highest rating for AMA is a 10-year South Florida exposure for those paint systems. Another example is corrosion resistance right below that, 15 hours for 03, 3,000 hours for 04, and 4,000 hours of exposure for AMA 2605. So it's really about that step change, the same testing, and then a matter of how far it, how durable it is to those tests. Next slide, please, Tom. So as a manufacturer, we provide the paint warranty, and the typical paint warranty supplied for these types of finishes covers 3 primary items. You've got fade, which is typically 5 delta E exposure. Chalk is a 6 or 8 rating, depending on whether it's a white or a heavily colored pigmented paint, which chalk in that first bullet point, that chalking is a degradation of the resin system. So the higher performing paint system you have, that resin will degrade at a longer rate and provide the better performance. Gloss is also a component of warranty on occasion, not on every warranty. The last item would be reference to film integrity. So that's really about how well the adhesion, the paint finish is adhered to the substrate material. Now, what I will say is, from a warranty perspective, it's kind of like the AMA testing. Those criteria, 5 delta E for fade, 6 or 8 chalk, and film integrity, it's really based on the paint system itself. And so it's the same for a polyester, the same for a FEVE, the same for a PVDF, but your timelines are different. Polyesters typically are going to be 5 to 10 years. Your high durable polyesters and FEVs can be out 10 to 20 years. And then when you get into the super performing PVDF, you're going to see 20 to 30 year warranties on those types of products. Next, Tom. So just in summary, from the perspective of what's the highest performing paint system for architectural applications, that's going to be your PVDFs, your Kynar, Hylar, PVDF resin base. It's a 70% PVDF resin by weight. Your gloss ranges are somewhat limited in these products, but ultimately you're looking for 30-year warranties, and in some cases you can have 25-year warranties with 3-coat systems in coastal environments. So the warranty itself is passed through, so it's actually warranted by the paint manufacturer. We pass it through to our customers, and that moves on to the building owner when the job is completed. I will say that as a manufacturer of the product, when I'm looking at specifications and looking at paint systems, I'm looking for 3 things in those specifications. The first thing I want to look for, is there any reference to the system type, that being the resin system? Is it specified as a PVDF, a fluoropolymer, FEVE? The second would be to look at, what type of warranty requirements are in the specifications. Is it 5, 10, 20, up to 30-year warranty requirements? And lastly, if there's a reference to that AMA specification. As a manufacturer, that's going to help identify what the expectations of performance of the paint system are going to be on the ACM. And that gives us a clear indication of, what type of product we would be, providing to our customer base. The last thing I want to just touch on real quickly, and this isn't really new news in the industry, but for the past 2+ years, there has been a shortage of PVDF resin in the market, the global market today. This was driven a lot by the excessive use and production of EVs in the market. They utilize the PVDF resin in the manufacture of batteries for EVs. And so that, growing market has created some shortages or perceived shortages in the market over the past couple of years. The initial reaction of the paint manufacturers was to, extend lead times, limit supply to the users. So at, probably 12 to 18 months ago, we were seeing extended lead times for materials, for paint materials. But that is, the market is now stabilized. The supply and lead times for us as the supplier of the paint system, we're back to lead times for both custom and standard colors that, back to before the PVDF resin shortage was an issue. So long term, we'll continue to see demand increase for the EV market, but there's added capacity in the marketplace. There'll be, additional capacity created globally to supply both the architectural coatings market as well as the EV market going forward. So no need to be alarmed on that. We'll continue to be able to supply these high performance coatings as we move on to the future. So with that, I'll pass it back to John to take on the next subject.
So let's talk about what is an MCM certified fabricator. As a certified fabricator, there's a couple different things. If I'm buying MCM, I want a certified fabricator on my project, because as a certified fabricator, you must show some things to the MC to be part of this program. And first and foremost, to be part of this program, you got to show experience. As a certified fabricator with that experience, you're going to have some projects under your belt. You're going to prove that you have some projects under your belt. You have to be able to prove that you can produce at least 150,000 square feet per year of the MCM product. Secondly, you're going to show services. You're going to have to show that you have services such as in-house drafting, engineering, project management, estimating, design services. You're going to have the full service or the full customer experience to be part of this program. You're also going to have to show that you have MCM systems and the requirements to meet the specification per the MCA, and that you've tested these systems to those standards. And you got to prove those, that you have those test reports and those certified test reports and meet those standards. And lastly, you got to have the financial backing. You have to show that you're financially stable. For the CFMA, you got to be able to be deemed healthy. You're also got to be able to show a surety letter with a comment that basically either an A+ or better rating. And you're going to have to show that you have the ability to bond a project. That's what it means to me to be part of that certified fabricator program. It also means that we're investing in our products. We're investing in our systems. We're giving you quality products. We're showing you that we have the experience to be able to produce these products. And then, be part of this program to better the industry and make sure that we're putting quality products on your projects. With that, take it to the next slide. Tom will talk about systems. So MCM systems. So an MCM system is designed to withstand specific loading while maintaining allowable deflection and thermal movement and performance. There's lots of systems out there. We could do a whole nother presentation about systems all itself. But let's just talk about two basic systems that you kind of see within the industry. First one we're going to talk about is wet joints. Wet joint systems or barrier systems are sealed with silicone. They're routed and fabricated in form pans with some type of extrusion or interlocking extrusion or clip system, and basically the whole system gets caulked in. And it is truly the barrier for the building. It's part of the waterproofing of the building. And those systems are, specified against the AMA 501 standards. Also list basically ASTM 283, ASTM 331, and ASTM 330. Now let's talk about dry joint systems. Dry joints or rain screen systems. There's a couple different variations of those. There are basically two main variations of rain screen panel systems out there. One is the DBVR, which is drain and back ventilated rain screen, and it's basically specified around the AMA 509 standards. And you have PER, or pressure equalized rain screen, and it's governed around the 508 standards. It's, utilizes 4 pans. It's mounted with aluminum screws, usually around the perimeter with some type of clip system. It allows for the dry joint reveal. That's why you see the terminology dry joint. 1/2 inch to 12 inch reveals that are allowed, and it makes it a rain screen. The joints can be finished with the reveal script, so it gives you that really clean look with no caulking in the systems at all. All MCM systems are governed, they're basically have NFP 285 requirements. We've heard a little bit about specifications, heard about the requirements and labeling and the NFP 285 requirements, but all MCM systems have these requirements. We've heard about EJs and then that performance requirement around those. So keep that in mind as well. As a specifier, you want to make sure that you're using the right system for your design project. Also, as a buyer, make sure the fabricator is providing you what has been specified for that project. With that, we take it to the next slide. Thomas talked about some specialty uses for MCM. The special uses for MCM, with MCMs, MCM can be used to a multitude of ways to meet design needs for your project. A couple of examples of this, you got some custom signage here, you got some column covers, you got some acoustical panels, sunshades, some monumental features, and some entry features. It's a very versatile product. It can be designed from the exterior to the interior of your projects. So some of the stuff you see here, down the bottom right, you see the monumental iceberg on a school we did. You also see a project that you have some acoustical panels. You'll see a project with a vestibule. So there's a lot of different variations here that you can use the MCM product. With that, let's take it back to Dutch to talk about a couple other projects.
So as you can see, we've got a couple examples of projects utilizing ACM. And just a couple notes on these. When you look at the Purdue University project on the left, this is, a effects type paint utilizing mica or metallic flakes, provides a very consistent look. The one key thing to keep in mind when you talk about the micas and metallic flake products out there is they are directional. So it's key for the manufacturers to provide directional arrows on the product. And it's also key for the fabricators to make sure that when they're laying out their projects, that they make sure that all the arrows are aligned properly to provide for a very consistent look on these projects. The Connors project to the right, that's really a specialty type product where you have a brushed aluminum substrate with an FEVE clear coat applied over it. The interesting thing with that type of a project or product that you have the actual metal itself is providing the the dynamic look of the building through that clear coat. And just as another note, when we talk about directionality of these, keep in mind that you've also got your the wood grain products, coatings, the natural stone products. Those too are directional in nature. So it's really key for the manufacturers and the fabricators to be keen on those types of situations. Next slide, please, Tom. So here's a couple of contrasting buildings. The St. Elizabeth project on the left, you see a single color used, multiple panels that are obviously duplicates of one another, so it's a very consistent look, monumental application. And then Lincoln Square on the right side, it seems like it may be a fairly simple type application, but when you start adding multiple colors into the project, in this case, this was a unitized curtain wall system incorporating the ACM panels with misaligned windows and such. So becomes very complicated, but it does show the differences of looks utilizing the same material and what the finishes do. Same material, different finishes creates a completely different look out there in the marketplace. So with that, let's go back to John.
One of the really neat things about this project or this product is basically being able to roll it from the exterior to the interior. And some interior examples of this we'll show you here. So MCM versatile, customizable from exterior to interior, right? Options for interior systems applications are really limitless, regardless of color, shape, texture, complexion, geometry, and curves. You kind of see those examples here. We'll talk about the Children's Hospital there. It's a monumental vestibule when you walk into this thing, and it's really stunning to look up and see this vestibule with this walkway. But it served a couple different purposes. In this project itself, it also serves for its acoustical values. So if you notice on the bottom side of that walkway, all those panels are perforated acoustical panels, and that's all MCM. And over on the right-hand side up the top there, you get the Omni Hotel, where you got your entrance lobby there with MCMs in it, and it also uses some matte black product, some wood grain product, and it's all integral to the same system. It really gives a sharp look. And then down at the bottom left, you got Kaleida Hospital, which is another vestibule, but it also incorporated those acoustical properties for the product. Then over on the right, down at the bottom there, you have the Oklahoma Police Academy, and it's a big entranceway with a vestibule to ceiling. And one thing that all these projects really have in common is being able to use this product for its low maintenance and its versatility, and being able to maintain these sharp looks and with the low maintenance of the product itself. With that, I'll take it back to Tom for the conclusion.
Okay, John, thanks very much. And one thing that strikes me as we go through this whole presentation here is all the different projects we have available with MCM and how different they all are, color-wise, shape-wise, and designs are so different, varied, and that's one of the beauties of MCM and the flexibility of it. And it all starts with the specification section 7. And I think John did a great job reviewing and covered a lot of ground. And we also, to augment that, is we on our site, on our MCA microsite, we have a 4mm MCM master spec available to all of you. If just get on the site and you can see what kind of specification in its full glory looks like. Then I handle the labeling and the engineering evaluations. These are two items that are obviously very important to your project. And our microsite has two very in-depth pieces for review. The MCM labeling, who cares and why? Well, who cares? There's a reason why it's there. And I think I try to point out some of those real reasons why, because they are part of the code. And I think everybody wants to make sure that their building meets the code. And to take that even further with the engineering evaluations, we have a webinar that was done last year. It's on our site, engineering evaluations, potentially a great option. And this goes into the fine points where we had Andy Williams as our technical advisor. We had one of the guys from Jensen Hughes on board with us on this one. And we actually did a presentation on the engineering evaluations, judgments or analysis, whatever you want to call it. And so that was a very, it's a good piece, and I definitely suggest taking a look at it. Another thing that I want to mention here as a side note, and it goes under the engineering evaluations, the MCM Alliance, in conjunction with a third-party consultant, we're putting together a research project to study the different air gaps in the systems via the NFP 285. And we're hoping to have some interesting results probably in the next 18 months, but it's going to take us a while to get through, studying and testing other types of systems. So that's one of the things we do as being a member of the MCM Alliance. So that's one thing I want to mention to you on that, because it is part of the engineering evaluations. When we got through the MCM finishes, this is what everybody sees on buildings. They see the colors, they see the shapes, things like that. But Dutch covered a few items on this huge subject. And to that point, the MCM Alliance is working with the architectural record people for a new course on finishes, which will be available for the 2024 year. And that'll be online probably starting in December. In the meantime, we also have a couple of white papers that are available on our site. One of them is on custom colors and samples. There's always an issue there, and as far as sizes, colors for the custom colors, and we go into explaining why that is in many cases. And we also have another white paper on field applying paint for touch-ups. Another item that we've covered bases. We had a lot of questions on that. Then John brought us back up to speed on the MCM certified fabrication and MCM systems. Again, our microsite has more information on these subjects, on what it takes to be an MCM certified fabricator. There's also a white paper on the definitions for an MCM panel system. You might think it's very basic, but sometimes people forget about what makes up a panel system. And we also have an in-depth dive into the rainscreen systems, white paper, which covers, again, the AMA 508 and 509 testing procedures and things like that. So we're very excited about all of those items we were able to bring up to you today. And buying MCM is something to think about. Our goal was to give you a value takeaway for your current or next MCM project. And we hope we've accomplished that very goal. And again, thanks again for joining us today. And I think we can get into some questions now. Kaylin,
Yeah.
over to you.
We do have several questions that have come through. As a reminder to any of the attendees today, if you do have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. I'll make sure that they get over to our team. They will either answer them live right now if they can. If they can't, we will make sure we get in touch with you with a true answer as soon as possible. So that being said, our first question is coming from a gentleman named Gordon Keller. And that individual is asking, Dutch had been using ACM aluminum technology terminology. Are the paint comments that he was mentioning also applicable to steel MCM?
Yes, technically those requirements would be applicable to steel applications as well. As an ACM manufacturer, we don't do any real coated steel products. Generally, any type of steel or other types of metals would be referred to as natural metal products. That would include stainless steel, zinc, copper composite. Typically, those types of finishes, those types of materials are utilized without a coating. The stainless steel would be, more like a brush type finish that you would see, but it's really about having that exposure. Your copper products, your zinc products, the natural metals are really designed to patina over time. So with your copper, you would see that gradual oxidation layer and get darker and darker. Would it ever get to, the green, true patina? It's hard to say depending on the environmental conditions there. The zinc would as well continue to patina. To utilize, these types of coatings on steel, yes, they're utilized by other manufacturers of single skin profile products or insulated metal panels. They utilize a lot of coated steel. For the composite business, for us, utilizing steel becomes a huge weight factor. So where you have steel composite material out there is going to create a lot more weight. The fabrication methods are much more challenging. Aluminum cuts so simply with high-speed routers, whereas steel would be a low-speed cutting. So it would just be a more costly application, not just from fabrication, but also from the installation side of things as well. Hopefully that answered the question.
I hope it did too, and I'm pretty sure it did. But if it didn't, feel free to send a message in the chat box, and we'll make sure we get. We'll make sure hopefully we have a better question, a more thorough question to get that answered. This is a question coming from a Donald K. In a percentage amount, what would be the rough overall cost for products and the difference between 2605, 2604, and 2603.
So you could look at that and say that you would expect 2605 products would be more expensive than the 2604 or 2603, but there's a lot of variables that go into that. If you're talking about the simple cost of the paint, then yes, there would probably be some percentage of cost difference. But when you get into the application onto aluminum, into a composite panel, into the fabrication and installation on the wall, that cost kind of gets watered down a little bit. You know, your 2605 type coatings, if they're standard products for us or standard stocking colors that meet 2605, then their cost is lower because we buy in large quantities coil coated metal to produce those products. If it's a small lot custom, well, now you're going to have a higher cost associated with the aluminum composite that would, you know, impact the job differently. So yes, there would be some savings on a apples to apple basis of paint system to paint system. But when you get, you know, further down the path to installation, there's a lot of variables that can create, you know, differentiations between those different. For example, you could have specify a stocking standard Kynar coming off the floor from us versus a custom polyester at a small lot. That custom polyester might be a higher square foot cost than the 2605 Kynar. So it's really about the job conditions and the overall impact of the fabrication.
Perfect. I do have another question coming in. This is coming from a Darren C. Is there any reference material to see how this material is trimmed out around windows specifically?
So, yeah, I think we have some different details out there. I think if you go onto our site, you can pick up some of those details, and some of the other manufacturers that all have these standard details within their websites. So if you go to any of the premium certified fabricators and go to their websites, you should be able to see the different conditions and different details that they have published on their sites.
Perfect. So those are the questions that I have today. No additional questions have been sent in. So I will say a huge thank you to the three of you for joining us, taking the time out of your day to present for us and with us. We do appreciate your time. To all of our audience members that are watching with us live right now, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for all of your support throughout the year. We will hopefully see you on July 26th. And without further ado, I'm gonna end this right here. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. We'll see you at the next MetalCon Live. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.